fantastic job. So can I welcome John?
Thanks, lads, for the banner. Look, it's good. It's good to come home. I might have lost my Scouse accent, but I've never lost the pride and the love for this city and its people. Never. Never. We've got a momentous decision in a few weeks' time facing this country. This election, I think, is a generational decision about where this country will go. And it will be critical for this city and the Northwest. Absolutely critical. They've compared Theresa May with Margaret Thatcher. Well, I remember what Margaret Thatcher did to this city and its people. It set back this city and the Northwest and the North for decades as a result of the policies that they introduced. And yes, I think they're right. I think Theresa May will be another Thatcher in the way that she treats Liverpool and the Northwest. So I think we need to warn people about what the potential is if the Tories get back into government. Because the potential, I believe, particularly for the North, is devastation. And you know, we've seen it already. We've seen the discrimination that takes place in terms of expenditure and infrastructure investment decided by the Westminster elite. £3,500 in infrastructure capital spend in London, the home county, is at best £1,000 up there. And you know, in the North East, it's even less, £400 per head. The decisions taken in Westminster and Whitehall have held this city back and the Northwest back for as long as the Tories are in government. We saw it under Thatcher, we've seen it over the last 7 years as well. Joe Anderson will have explained what they've done in terms of local government. We were up here with our economic conference a short while back, and we exposed the lack of investment in the Liverpool and the Northwest as a result of specific Tory government policies. So this election is absolutely critical. And what is it about? This election is about the people versus the establishment. Versus the elite. We want to ensure that in these next few weeks, with our 500,000 members and many other supporters as well, we break through some of the media bias that's been used against us in recent years. And you brought it in London, you've brought it in Liverpool, you've brought it in every working class community right the way across this country. But in Liverpool in particular, you've brought it especially. And I tell you, what Joe said about some journalists, I 100% support. Media bias against every representative that seeks to stand up for working people. And in this election now, we've got to cut through that. We've got to explain the policies, and we've got to explain the sense of direction and the vision that we have for our country. And we've got to explain to people the grotesque unfairness that there's been in the last 7 years under a Tory government. They've said time and time again that this Prime Minister, they've said it ad nauseam, they've said this Prime Minister is strong and secure. Well, if she's so strong and secure, why doesn't she debate Jeremy Corbyn? Because we'd be able to expose not just what they've done, but their ideas as well, their very ideology. For years now, this ideology has dominated their thinking. We call it neoliberalism. It's called trickle-down economics. Somehow this theory to justify their policies is that if you cut the taxes to the corporations and the rich, and you turn a blind eye to tax evasion and tax avoidance, somehow this money will miraculously trickle down to the rest of society, trickle down economics. Well, they've experimented with it for the last 7 years, and we know the consequences of it. The consequences are writ large, this week in particular. 1.25 million food parcels handed out to families that can't feed themselves in the 5th richest country in the world. What do you call that? A disgrace! Last week, an all-party group parliamentary report told us in the school holidays, when kids can't get their free school meals, there are 2 million children in this country now at risk of malnourishment during the summer holidays. This is 2017, not 1917. This is what this economic theory and their policies has delivered. A government that can't even feed its population. But also, you look at what they've done in terms of poverty. We now have 4 million children living in poverty. The Labour government, between 1997 and 2010, lifted 11 million kids out of poverty. There are now 4 million. Two-thirds of the kids that live in poverty are in families where someone is at work. What does that say to you about the level of wages in this country? A government that can't even ensure its population are fed. Who saw Daniel Blake? Daniel Blake. Yeah. Ken Loach did us all a service in that film. But you know, for many of us, I tell you, for many MPs here and councillors and others, that film, because we know what goes on when people come to our surgeries, our advice sessions, that film wasn't fiction, it was almost documentary for most of us. People who desperately and the way in which some of the most vulnerable have been targeted is appalling. And I think one of the most vulnerable groups that's been targeted by this Tory government are disabled. Disabled. The worst. The removal of benefits, the sanctions, the numbers now that we know committed suicide as a result of the removal of benefits, even the removal of notability cards. They seem to have targeted the most vulnerable. It's exactly as Jeremy said. They're strong against the weak, but weak against the strong. That's what the Tories are always about. But it isn't just about feeding people, is it? It's also, a government has a responsibility to ensure that people are housed. We now have every one of us will tell you right across the country, a housing crisis we've not seen since the Second World War. Homelessness doubling. People sleeping on the streets, waiting lists going up. Why? Because houses aren't being built, or if they aren't being built, many of them are being sold, not for homes, but for investment, often for foreign investors. We're selling the birthright of our children, the ability just to have a roof over their heads. So this is a government that can't feed its population and can't house its population. But you know as well, a government has a responsibility to ensure that when people want a job, they have a job, and when that job is available, it gives people a decent standard of living. We know now what this government is all about with trickle-down economics. It's about what they call flexible labour. And that's about the withdrawal of trade union rights, so people's wages and conditions are no longer protected. They're about the development of zero-hour contracts, insecure employment. TUC latest report, 1 in 10 now in insecure employment, and it's growing. The Deliveroos, the Ubers, the rest of them, in which they've exploited working people and suppressed wages as well. Again, so now we have a government that can't feed its population, can't house its population, and can't ensure that people, even when they go to work, have a decent income. But also, I think what angers us most as well, a government has a responsibility when people are sick to ensure that they're treated. And you know, sometimes a photograph says it better than words about what's happened to our NHS. The photographs of that child in the Mediterranean beach who died summed up for us what it was like for refugees. The photograph of that child being pulled out of the debris at Aleppo summed up for us what it was like in Syria. Well, the photograph that summed up the state of the NHS for me was that child being treated on 2 chairs put together in an NHS hospital. You'll see people on trolleys. You'll see waiting lists going up, and some of them with even serious conditions like cancer now can't get the appointments that they need. So we have a government that can't house its population, can't feed its population, can't ensure they have incomes with a decent wages, and can't even treat the sick. Well, I tell you, that's a government that doesn't deserve to exist. In these next few weeks, we're going to make sure people have hope. Hope in the alternative that we can provide them. And this is not rocket science. We start off with a fair taxation system. Because with fair taxes, in a wealthy country like ours, we can afford the public service and investment to grow our economy. Step 1, we will tackle tax evasion and tax avoidance of the rich and corporations. We will reverse the tax cuts that this government has given to the rich and the corporations. 70 billion plan. 70 billion in terms of cuts corporation tax. Corporations who at the moment are sitting on between an estimate 500 to 700 billion earned income and not invested. We'll ensure we reverse the cuts in capital gains tax, in inheritance tax, and they even cut the bankers' levy, the very people that caused the crisis in 2007, 2008. We will reverse them. But in addition to that, let me make this absolutely clear. We also want a fair taxation system, so that yes, taxes fall upon the broadest shoulders and middle and low income earners are protected. Only yesterday, the IFS, Institute of Fiscal Studies, said the cuts that are taking place and the various benefits that this government is pursuing means that families will lose out, the poorest families will lose out on £2,500. Average family is about 1,400, the other calculations. Why? Simply to give more money to the corporations of the rich. So we will have a fair taxation system. And what will we do with that money? Well, we'll invest. We'll establish a national investment bank, and we'll invest in our infrastructure, in our roads, in our rails, our new technology, alternative energy as well, and in the skills of our people. But I tell you how we'll invest. That national investment bank will also be a regional bank, and there will be a Bank of the North that will invest in the North. To be discriminated against in the way it has been over the last 7 years. And we will work with the voices of the North. Joe Anderson in Liverpool. We will work with Andy Burnham in Manchester. We will work with Stevie Rotherham in Merseyside. They will be the voice of the North that will determine the level of investment that will be directed across the Northwest in particular. In that way, we'll grow our economy in here as well. And we'll attract the high-skilled, high-wage jobs that we need in this city and this area in particular. But you know, when you have that growth in prosperity, we need to ensure that prosperity is shared by everyone. And that means tackling the wages issue. So we're saying very clearly, fair wages means a real living wage of £10 an hour. Protection for people at work and their wages and conditions is what? Join a trade union. And we'll make sure legislation is in place to protect people in trade unions. There will be no more blacklisting when Labour comes to power. We simply want governments in this country to abide by international labour organisation conventions. We want the same trade union rights that apply across Europe and elsewhere. This is not asking for the earth, it's asking for basic human rights. When we grow our economy, that we have a fair taxation system, it means we'll be able to invest in our public services. It means in terms of the NHS, yes, it will be fully funded. But I tell you also as well, we will not allow our NHS to be ripped off by privatisation every day. Local government, local councils and the mayors have the resources they need to invest in their local economies as well. But you know also, we'll build homes again. 1 million new homes, and half of them at least will be what? Let's use the word, council homes again. The environmental crisis that we face as a planet and as individuals as well, by ensuring we invest in the alternative energy sources that we need. And we'll ensure that we cooperatise that energy at the local level, working with local authorities, working with local mayors, so that we break the cartel that there is amongst the big energy companies that keep prices so high. In that way, we will transform people's lives, and we'll lay the foundations of it within one generation. But you know, we want to give hope to our young people. Education is a gift from one generation to another. It is not a commodity to be bought or sold. That's why the Attlee government was famous for having Nye Bevan set up the National Health Service. I want Jeremy Corbyn's government to have our own Nye Bevan, Angela Rayner. And I want us to set up a national education service that will be free, just like the NHS, at point of need throughout people's lives. We face the fourth industrial revolution. People will need to retrain. So we need skills training. We need to ensure that we reverse the cuts in school budgets. We need to develop the system of childcare so it's free to everyone over time. But also we want to relieve young people of their debts as well. That's why, yes, our ambition is scrapping tuition fees. Some of you may have heard this before. Our vision is this: a society which is radically fairer, radically more equal, radically more democratic, yes, based upon a prosperous economy, but that economy which is economically and environmentally sustainable, but where that prosperity is shared by all. What do you call that? I call it socialism. We desperately need now, in this next few weeks, to mobilise the support that we have in this country for those policies. I think it's a majoritarian support. I believe if we can cut through the media bias and we can actually address people doorstep by doorstep in meetings all over the country, we can convince them at long last there's the return of hope and the prospect of a society based upon social justice. This is our opportunity. This is the opportunity of a generation. Some of us here have waited all our lives for this, to have a government committed to those principles and those policies. We need courage, absolute determination, solidarity throughout. But above all else, what do we need to do? This is our time. This is the opportunity. Carpe diem. Seize the moment. Seize the moment. This city is where I was born. This city could be one of those communities that actually provides this country, for the first time in the last 7 years, with the rebirth of hope. The rebirth of hope. I urge you all now. Margaret and the others are all here. We have constituencies that we need to hold and constituencies that we have to win. I urge you all here, do not leave here without that commitment that you will be alongside us all in this struggle in this next few weeks to sustain and then achieve a Labour government that will transform our society. Solidarity.